Welcome back. We're watching Business Morning on Channels Television. We're turning our attention to another issue on the program now, but it is a sector that has been generating a lot of conversation in recent times. I'm talking about the Ministry of Solid Minerals. Of course, very recently, the ministry actually talked about a roadmap to mining and trying to increase the potential of that particular sector. So that's what we're focusing now on the program. We're talking about the roadmap to mining growth. I'm being joined on the program by a mining consultant who is also the CEO of Soundcore Group, Tony Wakalo. Good morning, Tony. Thank you so much for joining me on the program.
Good morning, Harry. Thanks for having me.
So a lot has been said about this industry, including, the advantages and disadvantages as it is. What do you think are the critical issues and challenges?
First of all, I think I want to congratulate the Minister of Solid Minerals for the work that was done regarding the roadmap. I think it was a very detailed document. But having said that, I think it is really possible to have a very sustainable mining ecosystem or mining industry in Nigeria. We just need to, do the right things first. One of which would be providing power.
So that's one of the issues. But what other issues are there? Because, I had conversations with you yesterday, and you actually mentioned some of those issues. Because apart from infrastructure, which is what is bedeviling a number of other sectors, there are other issues facing that mining industry, and seeing it's not growing at the potential it's supposed to. Even though in the second quarter results that were released by the National Bureau of Statistics just a few days ago, it actually showed that there was an improvement. But in times past, we've had that particular sector looking good at 4.33%, and very recently 2.65%, and everybody seems to wonder what happened.
Talking about the challenges first, we have challenges. There are myriads of challenges, but let's put it in perspective. We have challenges in the area of geoscience data. It's been widely said that the amount of geoscience data, which is the basis of investment in the mining industry, because you have to have, data that is bankable, data that is classified according to mineral resource classification standards, and I think the world system has adopted the JORC Australian system. So the geoscience data is one of the critical issues. I think that the Nigerian Geological Survey Agency has done some work in that regard, but the gathering and dissemination, maybe some things need to still be done to improve that. Another issue is the area of the industry participants. The operators in the industry would tell you, there's the lack of infrastructure generally across board, issues of bulk handling ports, issues of rolling stock, rail, things that enable the environment. That's also missing. You have stakeholders as well, that are basically not interested. The banks, for example, have no interest, as far as I'm concerned, in financing high-risk sectors, especially solid mineral sector, because exploration is a pretty, risky venture. You are trying to determine what kind of ore you have, if you have an economic reserve or not, and to do that you must drill, you must gather geoscience data, you must bring in your mining engineers. So if it ends up being a no-show, then you have to write it off.
Okay, so Tony, talk to us a little bit about the number of mineable ores we have in Nigeria, mineable minerals that we have in Nigeria. Let's start with that.
Okay, so we have several mineable ores, but what the question should be, which one do we have in economic quantity?
No, we'll get to that. Okay. We just need to know the amount first, and then which do we have that could be a gold mine that is waiting to be tapped? Okay,
we have 44 minerals in this country that have been verified by the Nigerian Geological Survey Agency. But the roadmap is focusing on 7 minerals. And these 7 minerals have been classified into 5 broad categories. The first one being the precious minerals. Precious minerals, you will have your gemstones like amethyst, like tourmaline, like aquamarine, and those kinds of things. We have them in the north-central part of Nigeria. The second will be your metallic ores. And, for your metallic ores, you actually have them in two types. You have the ferrous metallic ores, and then you have the non-ferrous metallic ores. Ferrous just meaning containing iron. So the ferrous would be iron-bearing. We have hematite and magnetite in Nigeria, in Kogi State, and some other parts of North Central. So that's the second ore classification. The third being the industrial ores, where you have things like barytes, which is the wetting agent for drilling mud. It's heavily demanded by the oil and gas industry. You have laterite as well. Then you have the construction minerals like limestone, like granite, and then you have the energy minerals, of course, like bitumen and coal.
Okay, the reason why I said that, because you actually mentioned that 7 minerals are the core focus in this roadmap. We'll get to the roadmap in just a bit. But very recently, a couple of weeks ago, the government, talked about some quantity, a small quantity of nickel that was actually found in Kaduna State. What was your immediate reaction when you heard that, especially in line with what the federal government plans to do in terms of revitalizing this sector, focusing on core minerals that they feel are bankable enough, maybe not in the immediate term, but in the medium to long term, to become, huge revenue earners?
Well, I was very glad. I mean, there's nothing like too many or too much resources, as it were, but I think the critical thing would be from discovery to actual mining activity. What are the things that need to be done, and why have these things not been done with the other minerals like coltan, which is tantalite, which is in Nasarawa State. Tantalite is used for the primary constituents of capacitors, your cameras, your phones, basically your electronic devices and circuits. So it's not a common commodity, but why haven't we done something with tantalite? It's also a metal. We have cobalt, what have we done? We have manganese, what have we done? So as much as I'm excited about nickel, there's a whole lot of things that needs to go from excavation to reclamation in terms of planning. That is the mining cycle. So for the nickel, you've mentioned that we've discovered. Yes, we've discovered, but you need to go into the ground and see what quantities of ore, the grade, the tonnage. You need to determine these things. Then what kind of gang means the waste, the tailings. These are the things that affect the pricing of that metal. If not, it's not competitive.
So in talking about that roadmap now, it's an 89-page document. I couldn't make it past, I think, the 17th page. But it was enough for me to get an idea of what the ministry wants to do. But let's take a look at the process, first of all, in terms of regulation. Do you think that sector is adequately regulated, or more should be done in terms of getting a lot more conversation going around the issues that were actually raised by the Minister of Solid Minerals?
For regulation, I mean, this would take me to the NATI report. I was a bit discouraged by the fact that when it was stated that some revenue was not accounted for in the oil and gas industry, there was a lot of uproar in the legislative chambers about that, and the NATI boss was called to speak about that. But when it came to solid minerals, till now nobody has said anything, and it's just a general feeling of how I think we have perceived the industry as something that is not a quick win. Yes, it's not a quick win, but the things that need to be done according to the NATI report are things like the tax issues. There have been recommendations that the Financial Reporting Council also has to deal with how these companies report whatever it is they've mined, for quarrying companies, for construction companies. It's because you have to pay royalties, and these royalties are on an ad valorem basis, which is basically on the basis of the value that you have mined. So if these quantities are not adequately reported, then there's a lot of stuff going on that we possibly need to look into.
But then, we need to attract investment to this particular sector, and transparency, which is what you're trying to get at, and accountability are very key before you can even get the right kind of investors to come in. So in trying to build a competitive mining value chain, you've talked about extraction, you've talked about exploration, we've talked a little bit also about the regulatory part of it. But in the very short term, do you think that there's any part of this roadmap that can begin to see any positive achievement or positive accomplishments?
Okay, well, the reason why I said the roadmap was very well done is because it has identified what your quick wins should be. The roadmap is actually a plan for 10 years. And it's been broken down into your immediate initiatives, your short-term, your medium-term, your long-term, and your ongoing initiatives. Your immediate initiatives would be, setting up the MIST according to the ministry, which will be the Mines Implementation Strategy team that would own this roadmap and own the process. So, in terms of quick wins, yes, the focus in the immediate to short-term is import substitution. And some of the industries that have been looked into, the industry like construction, roads, bitumen, for example. We have the Ministry of Works giving out contracts for roads. So the bitumen that is used by construction companies to construct these roads, what volume and how much of that comes from import, or how much of that is locally produced?
But then do you think it's actually possible to build a world-class, minerals and mining ecosystem to serve domestic and export market for minerals and all?
There's nothing that is impossible. It's just once there's a will, there's a way. I think that we've left the industry since the 50s, since the discovery of oil in 1956, and 56 to 2016, it's close to 50 years or more.
No.
So that's a lot of time that the industry has suffered decline, even in terms of capacity, geology, mining engineers. There's a whole value chain of people who make this work. Infrastructure, the government is doing a lot, but a lot more still needs to be done. We don't build infrastructure for infrastructure's sake. If you look at what the British did, they built infrastructure to be able to transfer commodities, whether they be agro-based commodities or solid mineral commodities, especially coal. So we need to look at these linkages between ministries that are developing this infrastructure and the solid minerals that we're actually extracting and processing. So
how can the private sector, play a role in this? Because it's not always just going to be about the government. The government, yes, will have to do enabling environment policies and the regulatory environment as well, but we need to have the buy-in of the private sector, and we've not got so much of that here in Nigeria. And so we know that it's going to be mostly foreign investors who will be coming into this particular segment of the industry. How can it be done in such a way that everybody has a win-win out of it? Okay, so in answer to that question, I think private sector, you need to classify what area they play. So the Federal Ministry of Mines and Steel Development, as they're now called, has 4 departments. It has the Mines Inspectorate Department, it has the Mines Environmental Compliance Department, it has the Mining Cadastral Office, and I think the Artisanal and Small-Scale Mining Department. Now, of all of these departments, I think the artisanal and small-scale miners make up close to 80 to 90% of all of the activity that goes on, which means that they're not paying attention to environmental issues, they're not paying attention to mine planning or mine development, or even reclamation of the land for whatever purposes after the mines are closed. Therefore, if you look at best practices, you will not find a lot of, Australia is a big mining company, and they have to operate above board. So if you come into an environment where there's no environmental enforcement, these things can come and cause problems, worse problems than the oil and gas, like what you see in the Niger Delta. Yes, mining can cause more serious problems, acid rain, you have to look at oxygen levels. There's so many things that need to be looked at in terms of safety and regulation. So private sector right now doesn't seem to be ripe enough to play, because that's for the domestic market. Yes, for the domestic market, just because of capacity. They have a few that are doing, like you have junior explorers whose job it is to verify these ore deposits and then present such findings to majors like Rio Tinto, like BHP Billiton. But these majors, you find they don't necessarily look at Nigeria as a mining destination, probably because of the infrastructural challenges, probably because of regulatory issues, but I think we're moving forward. Okay, so in the very short term, do you think that, the roadmap is a step in the right direction? You already mentioned that. But those immediate, action plans, do you think they're achievable? I would want to single one out. When we talked about the recession, one of the things that kept, standing out was power generation. And coal to power. You look at how to solve your power problem, whether it be natural gas fueled or whether it be coal fueled, we need power. We cannot be talking about mining or the mining ecosystem with
5,000 megawatts of power. South Africa has I think about 40,000 megawatts, and that's 60 million people. The smelting facilities for iron ore, we are glad that Itakpe is supposed to be running, but you can't even turn off the furnaces. It's more expensive to turn it on and to turn it off and put it back on. So coal, I think, everybody, once you give Nigerians power, I think that they would give the government respite.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Tony, for coming on the program.
Thank you, Harriet.